Are you my husband's friend in the middle school? I'm sorry, but I want you to leave immediately. My name is Jackson, and I am 33 years old and single. Today was the wedding of my friend Lucas, who works in the same company with me. I was approached by a bride's relative and led to the waiting room before entering the ceremony hall. The man who claimed to be a relative was in good shape and took me forcibly with his strong arms. Aside the relative's forcibility, I assumed the bride wanted to greet me before the ceremony. I admired how courteous she was. However, my admiration turned to disgust in the next moment. The reason I was summoned was not to greet but to threaten me. The bride, who was waiting in the waiting room, gave me a devilish expression. I was startled for a moment, but I congratulated her anyway. Congratulations on your wedding. Just after I bowed, she told me to leave immediately. What? I couldn't help but respond. The bride's response to my question was tedious. This is why uneducated people are so bothersome. With a click of her tongue, I could hear what she was muttering. It seems the bride hates the fact that I only have a high school diploma. She stated, "You don't seem to understand, so I'll say it clearly. My husband and I come from an elite family, and today's attendees are also from the elite corps. It makes me unpleasant to see a middle school graduate among us." I was aware of it. They said my academic background was embarrassing. Of course, I know that Lucas is an elite. And I also know how people feel against me who value the academic credentials. I was well aware of that in my life. But I still went to Lucas's wedding because it was just friendship. All I wanted to do was celebrate my friend's marriage. It's not good that the bride, who is the main guest, despised me so much. I asked if I could say a few words of congratulations to Lucas before leaving. The bride and her relatives exchanged glances and blew up at the same time. It's too much for me. I asked them why they were laughing though I was serious. The bride said something I never expected to hear. She stated, "My husband invited you to the wedding not for friendship, but for compassion." The bride continued regardless of my confusion. About my troubled past. As I was abandoned by my parents and raised in an orphanage, and I grew tall but skinny even as an adult due to a lack of nutrition during my growth period. Lucas and I went to the same school. He invited me to his wedding because of the compassion to his classmate. Compassion to my situation that I couldn't eat enough even now. The bride assumed he was attempting to feed me at the wedding. I argued that this was impossible, but the bride and her family paid no attention. She said, "My husband's compassion could raise his value." But I can't bear. A person who only graduated from junior high is attending my wedding. Lucas graduated from a prestigious university and joined a large corporation with annual sales in excess of $100 billion. You claim to work for the same company as my husband, but you work as a janitor or security guard. And you think he'll feel sorry for you just because you're classmates? It's outrageous. We both work for the same company. Our company has only recently gone public, but it is a promising one. It's also a popular place to work, ranking first among job seekers. The company's policy is to hire as many talented people as possible, so if you are deemed necessary for the company, you can join it regardless of your academic background. However, no matter how large the company, I am aware that there is a gap between a junior high school graduate and a college graduate. But regardless of whatever reason he had to invite me, I wanted to congratulate Lucas. I'm not expecting anything in return. Regardless of how much I express my true feelings and plead my case, the bride does not even attempt to understand me. She is always looking at me coldly, as if she is looking at something dirty. She was holding her mouth shut, as if she was trying not to breathe the same air as me. She lightly trampled on my passionately expressed friendship thoughts. Would you cut off from my husband and from the job as you graduated from junior high school? She would not only refuse to let me celebrate their marriage, but she would also cut me off at work. I was stuck for a word. No matter how much the company accepts a junior high school graduate, I refuse to accept it, and I refuse to have anything to do with my husband. A male relative grabs my breasts. Hey, please don't be so harsh. I tried to grab his arm and shake him off, but he shoved me against the wall. I felt a dull pain in my back and lungs and gave a low growl. If you understood, just leave. The door to the waiting room opened before the relative could finish its sentence. I was thrown out with a mighty thud, hitting the floor with all my might. Still, I couldn't leave like this without congratulating Lucas. I didn't want to be locked out before the wedding, so I went to a nearby cafe to spend time, and then entered the venue, blending in with the other guests. When the wedding reception began, the bride found me at my seat. She fixed her piercing gaze on me. Without saying anything, the bride moved her mouth and said to me, "Why are you here?" By the bride's expression, the relative man noticed me. He charged over to me, grabbed my arm, and attempted to drag me away. But he couldn't get rid of me as easily as he did in the waiting room. The attendees who were sitting nearby clung to the relative man and shielded me. "What are you doing?" The relative looked terrified. I could see the bride was in a hurry as well. I took a microphone that was nearby and announced in a loud voice to the bride, who did not understand what had happened. "Bride, I'm sorry for telling you to leave. I was eager to attend Lucas's wedding, so I came." What the hell is going on? What in the world is this? Lucas, who was sitting on the head table, heard our conversation and asked us, "Go away? You said that to Jackson?" The frightened bride, who was questioned by Lucas with an unexpectedly frightening look on his face, said in a squeezing voice, "Because that man says he's only graduated from junior high school. It will be a bad match for both Lucas and me." I talked to the bride, who was in such a slumbering state. "I'm sorry, I couldn't disappear, but I'll cut off my business ties with Lucas as your wish. Please forgive me for this, and that means you're fired, Lucas." The entire hall fell silent at my words. The first to break the quiet atmosphere was the bride. "What? What do you mean, fired?" Lucas answered shakily. What the hell did you say?" "Jackson is the president of my company." "That's right. I was the guy who started a delivery company at the age of 16, even though I graduated from junior high school. And over the course of 10 years, I grew the company into a major corporation. I started the delivery service only with my own bicycle. By facing a time when people were spending more and more time at home, it quickly became a publicly traded company. Lucas was my friend and a fellow member of the facility. He always shared his meals with me, taking care of me when I was skinny. He was more than just a friend, he was a benefactor. I grew up in an orphanage until I was 15 years old, while Lucas was adopted at the age of 12 and raised by the current parents. Lucas was clever enough so that he quickly improved his studies and entered a prestigious university. We kept in touch with each other even after we moved away from each other. When we started our own company, Lucas said to me, "I'll study hard and support the company." After our dream came true, Lucas got married. I was so happy when I heard that Lucas, who was so shy, was getting married. I wanted to congratulate him more than anyone else. That was the reason why I persisted even though the bride refused so much. I didn't hear anything about that. A junior high school graduate is not the president. It's true that even a junior high school graduate is the president. I have the right to fire people. And it was the bride herself who asked me to cut off the business with Lucas. I gently told her that I did as she wished. She said, "Huh? Then Lucas is really fired?" The bride, who had been frozen, muttered, "Fired? If you're such a bum, I don't want you anymore. I quit this marriage. It's meaningless if you're not an elite and don't have a high income." What a surprise that she declared that she was breaking off her engagement with Lucas, who had just been fired. The attendees boomed loudly at these words. "Shut up! I'm the victim. The good terms we had before we got married suddenly disappeared. This is just like a marriage scam," she exclaimed and demanded compensation from Lucas for breaking off the engagement. As expected, Lucas was disgusted by this behavior. Here, I quietly tapped the screaming bride on the shoulder and whispered, "You're the one who's going to pay the alimony, you know." After I said so, I played the video recording of my phone on the projector in the hall. This was taken by the phone I had dropped in the bride's waiting room. When a male relative grabbed me, I pressed the record button on my phone, and it might be evidence of my injury. It appears that I then dropped it with the impact of being pushed against the wall. The phone that fell off continued to record, and it recorded the bride being unfaithful to the male relative in the waiting room. After the ceremony started, I went looking for the phone in the waiting room where I would have dropped it. And luckily, I found the phone lying in the corner of the room. I was shocked to see the contents of the recording. I couldn't believe they were doing such a lousy thing on such a sacred day as a wedding. I really couldn't believe it as a human being. And immediately, I went to report it to Lucas. In other words, the earlier firing sentence was a surprise that Lucas knew about. To reveal the true nature of the bride, Lucas's relatives blamed the bride's relatives fiercely. The bride's relatives, however, refused the attack, saying, "We don't have any relatives like that man." They refused the claim. Later, it turned out that the man who was with the bride was just an adulterer. He had a nice face and was a great guy to hang out with, but he was a pimp who didn't even work. The bride, who wanted to live a celebrity life as a member of a well-educated family while having a boyfriend, set her sights on Lucas, who was gentle and reserved, and strongly asked him to marry her. She really was a trashy woman. Lucas, who studied all the time and had little experience in love. Lucas was kind and trusted people easily. In the end, I'm glad that I could see through his bride's evil ways because I was a high school graduate. I never thought my education would come in handy this way. The evil scum bride then had to pay $5 million in wedding reimbursement and $3 million for breaking off the engagement, for a total of $8 million in debt. Of course, she was insulated from her relatives, as she was humiliated. and her adulterous partner, who was frightened by the amount of debt, ran away. She fell into a life of living alone in a shabby apartment, working day and night, desperately trying to pay off her debts. Thanks to the appearance of the scum woman, the friendship between Lucas and I deepened, and the company grew rapidly and steadily. For Lucas, who has always had a strong desire to get married, I think I would join a matchmaking party with him next time.